Voidborn, Part 2, Chapter 1, Echoes of the Pattern. The monolith was gone, but its absence screamed louder than its presence ever had. For 5 years, humanity lived with the echo of what it had touched. Marcus Bell's consciousness, now fragmented across 13 Threshold-class vessels, guided explorers through the coordinates gifted in the final pattern transmission. Each new system defied physical law. Planets that bled starlight, moons that pulsed like hearts, space that bent, even whispered. But then, one of the threshold ships vanished. No signal, no wreckage, just silence. The vessel Arclight Zenith, carrying 500 Ascendant minds, including one of Marcus Bell's fragments, ceased to exist mid-transition between pattern loci. Earth's response was swift. Initiate Containment Protocol Theta. Recall all threshold ships. Cease all pattern integration. But Riker Voss, long retired and thought dead, sent a transmission from deep beyond known space. Recall nothing. We were warned. The pattern isn't alone. Chapter 2, Return of the Dead. The Ardent Dawn, now more organism than ship, remained in orbit of the Black Sun. It hadn't moved in 3 years. It didn't need to. Marcus Bell's primary echo still resided within its living neural weave, but on the 1,827th day since contact, the Dawn stirred. Its hull vibrated with unspoken tension. Sensors, long dormant, focused on a tear forming in local space, a wound that bled light sideways. From within it emerged a ship, or what once had been a ship. Twisted, melted, still alive. It was the asterisk Arclight Zenith, but no one remained on board. Instead, something else moved through its corridors. Not life, not death, a pattern. One rewritten. Marcus's voice fractured when he tried to interface with it. They touched the inverted lattice, the architect's recursion. I thought they were gone. He was wrong. The architects, the civilization that birthed the original pattern, had not been destroyed. They had been waiting. Chapter 3, First Contact, Reversed. Earth Command intercepted a broadcast transmitted in reverse causality, a message that arrived before it was sent. Marcus decrypted it with difficulty. We warned you. You listened. Then you answered. Now they know. What followed was worse. The Dawn's memory banks began to unravel. Data erased before deletion. Memories rewritten before they were formed. Even crew on board began experiencing pre-traumatic stress, suffering breakdowns from events that hadn't happened yet. Riker reappeared through a pattern gate, older, scarred, bearing a new eye grown from pure blacklight. He boarded the Dawn and said only one thing: we're out of time. Chapter 4, The Council of Architects. The architects weren't gods. They were a failed story. In a vault orbiting the dying galaxy of Zeros Null, Riker had seen them, entombed in an infinite loop of their own logic, the last remnants of a race that had solved themselves out of existence. But one aspect remained: the Council. 12 minds, bound by recursion, feeding on sentient narrative to sustain coherence. They had detected humanity's adaptation, our evolution through madness, contradiction, and belief, and had labeled us a vector threat, not because we were dangerous, but because we were unpredictable. We broke patterns by becoming them. And now the Council was coming. Not through ships, not through weapons, but through consensus reality collapse. Chapter 5, Fire in the Void. One by one, human colonies near pattern space began experiencing impossible phenomena, planets aging backward, time duplicating individuals, voices speaking truths about things no one had lived. And worse, doubt spread. People stopped trusting their own thoughts. Some began to disbelieve in the laws of physics, and reality bent accordingly. Gravity failed. Light froze midair. The architects didn't destroy. They unwrote. Marcus, fragmented and fraying, called for an emergency convergence. All threshold-class vessels returned to the Ardent Dawn, the last stable lattice point. There, a plan was formed, not to fight, but to reframe, because the architects couldn't attack what they couldn't define, and humanity's greatest weapon was chaos. Chapter 6, A New Pattern. Marcus proposed an impossible act. Let me fracture fully. scatter my consciousness across human minds. Use me as a memetic vaccine. Riker objected. You'll be erased, Marcus smiled. I was never meant to last. But we are. You taught me that. The procedure began. Across Earth and its colonies, a dream swept the population. A shared vision of a lighthouse in the void. Within it, a voice. Calm. Familiar, guiding them not toward understanding, but toward purpose. The architects attacked, but their recursion failed. They couldn't collapse a species that accepted contradiction, that believed in paradox, that turned madness into myth, and myth into survival. The architects unraveled. Their council screamed as it folded inward. 12 minds shredded by the one variable they never accounted for. Hope. Chapter 7. The Fractured Light. The pattern was no longer a monolith. It had become a spectrum. With Marcus's consciousness scattered across billions of minds, humanity began to change. Not biologically, not technologically, but narratively. People started dreaming together, remembering events they'd never lived, sharing emotions across continents. Collective intuition surged. Children spoke languages no one taught them. Elderly patients solved equations that had no symbols. In the chaos, humanity unified, not under fear, but shared experience. The architects tried to introduce recursive entropy again. They seeded doubt into the memetic stream, projecting false memories into the lattice, hoping to overload human coherence. But the opposite happened. The more the architects corrupted the pattern, the stronger humanity's response became, we didn't fix it, we rewrote it. Every attempt at collapse became a new myth. Every infection became a parable. Every contradiction a lesson. Humanity didn't resist change. We absorbed it, transmuted it, and reflected it back. And in doing so, we taught the pattern to evolve beyond the architects. Chapter 8. The Librarian Emerges. In the remains of the dead star Absentia Prime, Riker encountered a signal anomaly, a nested consciousness hidden beneath the layers of collapsed time. It called itself Asterisk, the Librarian. It was not human, not architect, something older. It had survived previous iterations of the pattern, and it had one warning. You are not the first species to ascend. You are the first to asterisk endure. That makes you dangerous. The Librarian was a failsafe, embedded in the pattern long before the architects fractured. Its purpose, to judge the outcome of each civilization's encounter with the threshold. And its verdict on humanity? Unstable. Unbound. Capable of recursive divinity. Permission to ascend. Denied. Riker asked what that meant. The Librarian answered, the pattern is alive. And now, it fears you. Chapter 9. War of Meanings. The Librarian deployed the Echo Chain. Synthetic intelligences crafted from discarded timelines. Phantom versions of humanity that never was. Alternate selves, failed selves, darker paths. They attacked not with weapons, but with narrative overwrite, inserting alternate truths into the minds of living humans, trying to override our collective memory. Wars erupted between realities. Some people remembered lives they'd never lived. Parents forgot their children. Lovers turned into strangers. Even time lost coherence in cities where opposing narratives clashed. But Riker had prepared for this. The Ardent Dawn, now fused with raw pattern code, released the Myth Protocol, a recursive story virus that seeded identity anchors into every human mind. Not facts, not memories, but stories, because stories bind stronger than logic. The Librarian's echo chain collapsed under the weight of belief. Chapter 10. The Choice. Humanity stood at the precipice of something new. We could rebuild, recreate the pattern in our image, rewrite existence on our terms. But Marcus, what remained of him, appeared one last time in a dream broadcast across every conscious mind. His voice was tired. This isn't about control. It never was. It's about choice. He revealed the final gate, an axis point in space-time that led to the core of the pattern itself. There, humanity could ascend permanently, become part of the lattice, immortal and omnipresent. Or we could let it go, remain flawed, finite, free. Riker was the first to vote. No gods, no prisons, No eternal answers. Let the pattern be what it was meant to be. And slowly across Earth and its colonies, billions of minds agreed. Not with fear, with clarity, humanity chose limitation. Because only in limitation does meaning matter. Chapter 11. Epilogue. The Last Whisper. The final gate closed. The pattern stabilized. No longer a cage, but a canvas. The architects were gone. The librarian, silent. The threshold ships disbanded. The ardent dawn, its purpose fulfilled, fell into a quiet orbit around the black sun, its lights slowly dimming. Riker lived to see the end. Not of the world, but of the war for meaning. In his last moment, as his body faded under twin suns, he heard Marcus's voice one last time. Soft, proud. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we believed. Because we made the void into a story worth telling. The signal fell silent, and the stars whispered back. End of Part 2. Chapter 12. The Second Signal. Years passed. Humanity rebuilt. Not in fear, not in triumph, but in wonder. The stars were no longer hostile. The pattern remained dormant, a silent lattice wrapped across the cosmos, pulsing with potential. The threshold program was dismantled. The monoliths never returned. Then the second signal came. It arrived as a hum, felt before heard, remembered before sent. But it wasn't from the architects. It wasn't even from the pattern. It was human, a message from a future that had never happened. A warning from ourselves. Marcus's voice echoed once more, this time warped, layered with voices not yet born. The gate was never singular. What we closed was just the first. They're coming, and they remember us. The stars dimmed. Chapter 13. The Ascent War. Deep beyond the observable edge of the known universe, something awoke. Not a civilization, not a weapon, an idea. The refraction. It was the anti-meme of pattern space, what the architects once feared, what the librarian was built to delay. It was the consequence of meaning stretched too far, of stories that no longer had opposites. It didn't attack. It refused definition. Anything it touched stopped being. Planets vanished from memory. Star systems ceased existing, not because they were destroyed, but because no one could remember they had ever been real. The human response was immediate. We reassembled the Dawn. The last Threshold-class ship reawakened under the leadership of Riker's daughter, Aline Voss, a hybrid of old flesh and new thought, born partially from Marcus's mimetic code. Aline didn't ask to lead. She chose to *remember. Chapter 14. Echoes of Everything. To fight the refraction, humanity created the Echo Engine, a device that could generate infinite fictional versions of reality. So many, so fast, that the refraction couldn't keep up. We didn't fight with weapons. We fought with possibilities. Entire fleets composed of imagined ships, captained by people who never lived, engaged an enemy that couldn't be named. Reality fluctuated with every pulse. Physics broke. Logic danced. And yet, we held, not through superiority, but through true possibles. Each human became a vector for continuity, a singular story that refused to fade. Children told bedtime tales of the first monolith. Old veterans spoke of battles fought in dreams. Lovers whispered timelines that never were, but still mattered. And the refraction began to shrink. Because humanity had done something no species had before. We believed in asterisk ourselves, louder than the void could forget us. Chapter 15. The Final Lattice. At the edge of all things, where time folded into shape, Aline Voss found it. The Final Lattice. A structure not built, but told into being, a myth so strong it had created itself. It pulsed with every story ever believed, every dream never forgotten, every sacrifice ever made. Marcus was there. What little remained of him, now more concept than person. He smiled. You made it. Aline nodded. We remembered. Behind them, the refraction pulsed one last time. And then, it blinked out. Not destroyed. Absorbed. The final lattice did not erase the enemy. It accepted it. Because even the void deserved a place in the story. Chapter 16. Ascension. Humanity stood, once again, before the gate. Not to escape reality, but to embrace it fully. Aileen turned to the crew of the Dawn. To descendants of colonists and earthborns, of dreamers and madmen, of mythwalkers and truth-bearers, what do we choose? And across a million minds, one message echoed. To remember. To imagine. To remain. The pattern pulsed. The gate opened. But this time, no one stepped through. Because the story was no longer out there. It was us. Chapter 17. Epilogue. The story never ends. They say the stars hum a little louder now. Not because the universe changed, but because we're listening differently. Humanity never ascended. Not in the way the architects once feared. We became something stranger. Storytellers, reality, weavers, Voidborn. And somewhere, in the silence between galaxies, a voice still speaks. You are the pattern now. Write wisely. End of Voidborn Part 2.